Welcome back. My name is Brad Hill, and today we're going to be breaking down Psalms 90. We're going to break this down and we're going to study it just a couple verses at a time. A little bit of background on Psalms 90 is this was a prayer prayed by Moses when they were in the wilderness during that time of Exodus. So let's go ahead and we're going to start in verse 1. Lord, you have been my dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or even you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. And you see, Moses starts out by declaring who God is to his people. That part where it says, you have been our dwelling place in all generations, just declaring that that is who God is, recognizing that he is our dwelling place. And then he goes in to just talk about how magnificent God is. Before the mountains were brought forth, just that awesome power of God, that everlasting nature of God, that he's always consistent and he's always present, always was, always will be, just acknowledging who he is. And that makes sense and is very important because as we read down, you'll see how Moses starts to acknowledge how frail we are as humans and how God still uses us to accomplish his will. Now let's take a look at verse 3. It says, you return man to dust and say, return, O children of man. For 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night. And again, we see in verse 4 that declaration of how awesome and everlasting God is. 1,000 years is nothing but a day in his sight. And this is being declared by Moses as he's comparing that to how frail we are as humans when he says, you return men to dust. Now in verse 5, it says, you sweep them away as with a flood. They are like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed, and in the evening it fades and withers. Again, we see how everlasting God is compared to our frailty. Lives are so short to humans that we are simply just like the grass, rising in the morning and withering in the evening. We're like a short dream, and then we're done. And God still chooses to use us in our frailty. Now let's take a look at verse 7. For we are brought to an end by your anger, by your wrath we are dismayed. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. The end there in verse 8, our secret sins in the light of your presence. You know, as we spend time with God, as we dwell with God, like it says in verse 1, he is our dwelling place. As long as we're dwelling with him in his light, that light exposes those secret sins in our lives, and we have no choice. If we're going to follow Jesus, we have no choice but to respond to that because he has our best interest. In this short amount of life that we have, he has our best interest, and above all, the best interest for his kingdom in mind. And so no matter what, we can trust him to shine his light on those sins so that we can be better used to further his kingdom. And in verse 9, it says, for all our days pass away under your wrath. We bring our years to an end like a sigh. Again, how short life is, how frail we can be as humans. The years of our life are 70, or even by any reason of strength, 80. Yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone and we fly away. Who considers the power of your anger and your wrath according to the fear of you? And then if we go down to verse 12, it says, so teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. And this is kind of where it's all starting to sum up. This whole God is infinite and we are finite. Like all the way up through verse 11, that has been the message, right, of how finite we are, how frail and fragile we are, and how infinite and amazing God is. And at the very top of this, it talks about how he is our dwelling place. This infinite being of awesomeness is our dwelling place because we are so frail. And so when we get to verse 12 and it says, so teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. What it means to number our days. Have you ever thought about that when you've read this verse? Has this ever, this phrase in verse 12, has this ever stuck out to you? To number our days. To teach us to number our days. What does that mean? Well, I think it means that we are to take inventory of our life and see an estimation of about how much we have left, how many days we have left, not just so that we can keep living and doing things for ourselves, but how could we truly be used for the kingdom? And that's where the wisdom comes in. Because if we can understand that our days are numbered and we can anticipate that we know how little time we actually have to make an impact on the kingdom and those around us. And so that wisdom should create an urgency inside of us to want to move on that and to do something about it. And in 13, it says, return, O Lord, how long? Have pity on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, that we may rejoice and be glad all of our days. And again, that dwelling in God, this infinite being that we're dwelling in and spending time with, that can cause us to be glad all the days of our life. Even as short as they are, we can be glad and rejoice in the fact that we dwell in God the Most High. And in 15, it says, make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, for as many years as we have seen evil. Let your work be shown to your servants and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of our hands upon us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. So I'm going to read verses 16 and 17 one more time. Let your work be shown to your servants, and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of our hands upon us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. Verse 16, it says, let your work be shown to your servants. This is Moses asking God to show him his work. Where should he be serving? Because Moses is a servant of God. Where is God working? Because that's where the servants need to be. We are servants of God. Where is God working? We need to be where he is working. And that is what I would encourage out of this, is to pray that prayer. Where would you have me serve, God? And then in 17, it says, let the favor of the Lord be upon us. So as we're serving wherever God is, we are asking for his favor, not just for us, but because we want the work that we're doing for him to be established by him. So that brings us to the end of Psalms 90. These are some of the things that I pulled out of it as I studied through it. I would encourage you guys to go through there and read again and see if there's something new that jumps out at you, and then discuss that with the group, or possibly go through some of the things that I've talked about here and then see if there's something deeper that you might want to discuss with the group as well. Thanks, and I will see you guys in the next video.